What's up, everybody? Once again, this is Bill Mack here with your weekly TNA wrap up for April the 5th, 2016. As we get ready to dive into another episode and review of TNA Impact on Poptv, we begin to show off this week as it opens up with a recap of last week's title match between Jeff Hardy and Drew Galloway, which was a really good back and forth match. It tested both guys' abilities, and both of them, are very exciting to watch in the ring. And Jeff, like I said, you wouldn't, he's had surgery and he's come back, and he's, it looks like he just really hasn't stopped being Jeff Hardy. He's going to continue on no matter what. But as we saw, it was an epic match last week. We see here that we begin it as Josh Matthews is showing the cage, because as tonight, there's a lot of stipulations for different matches in tonight's event, and we see one is the Six Sides of Steel, which is, we all know, is going to be the match with Jeff Hardy versus Eric Young, and Eric Young is basically on his way out, so we're going to see how well he does, which he does really good in this match. They begin, as we see at the announce table, Matthews is joined by Jeremy Borash, as we see this week. So we kind of see that the Pope apparently is going through with no longer commentating and becoming back a professional full-time wrestler. So we're going to see how well he does in his match tonight. But we go to it as Borash and both Josh Matthews introduce the show, and we see that Eric Young and Bram come to the ring and enter the cage, and Young cuts a promo saying that he's going to end up pile driving Jeff Hardy from the top of the cage. Which, we're likely to see that happen, but it's, of course, it's the heel promo. He's trying to get that heat against Jeff Hardy's against the fans and Jeff Hardy, and the fans start chanting Hardy, of course, and then all of a sudden Jeff comes out. Jeff makes his entrance, and Jeff basically comes out, and he's not alone. Jeff Hardy comes out, and he has a table of his own, you see, and we see that from right off the get-go that Bram and Eric Young, they all end up attacking Hardy, and Hardy is trying to fend him off. He hits Bram with a table. He's trying to throw Eric Young against the ring steps. We see all this stuff happening, and but after a little bit, as typical, the typical double team on Hardy happens, and he's trying to fend him off, and then which he does have a little bit of offense, but as you know, folks, usually when that kind of thing happens, pretty soon numbers come into play. So we see numbers come into play, and they both dominate Jeff Hardy, and they throw him inside the cage, and then the bell rings. So after all this work that they've done on double teaming, now we look at Jeff and see he's beaten down before the match even starts, double team, because he wasn't inside the cage for the match to officially start and inside the ring. So we see what's going on there, and then it shows us that as Jeff, and because Eric Young threw some there was a table, and there was some chairs that he had brought inside the ring. So we see that as Bram decides he's going to want to try to interfere in the match, because the door hasn't been closed yet. So, but Jeff Hardy sees that, and he goes and drop kicks Bram right through the doorway on out. So then after that, we see that the door is finally locked, and Bram can do nothing but stand on the outside. And we see that while he's doing that, Eric Young takes advantage of that, and he begins taking control of the match. And it's good to see Eric Young going all out, because we know that his days in TNA are right now over with, but the tapings show his action, and that he's not going to give just this lackluster performance during the match, and he's not going to just play it safe and coast on his way out. That he's going to still give that. So I'll give that to EY. He's really good for doing that. And Eric Young, no matter whether he's been a heel or face, he still tries to give his all, and he did in this match. And it shows at one point to where Eric Young ends up pile driving Matt Hardy through 4 chairs, and and that we're in the middle of the ring. And we know that's gotta hurt. That's really gotta hurt as that happens. But for and typical enough as he pile drives and he ends up going for the cover. Hardy kicks out at 2. And then Hardy comes back and he tries to do a pile driver of his own, but Eric Young blocks it. And then Jeff ends up hitting a twist of fate on him instead, and then hits a second. And then he positions. We see Eric Young on the table, and as he goes up to climb up the side of the cage, Bram is there by it. So Bram is trying to distract Jeff. Jeff ends up kicking him off the cage, and he ends up climbing the cage, and he's doing his little thing to the crowd, getting the crowd to hype up to cheer because he's going to jump off the cage, of course, and he ends up performing a swanton bomb on top of Eric Young and getting the pin and defeating him. So we see now at the end of this match, which is basically a little over 12 minutes, 12 minutes and 40 seconds long. That Eric Young is defeated by him. So another stellar performance. The face goes over, but Eric Young give his all in a match, and we see that. I think this was a good, strong match. It was good to see. It was good to see Jeff coming back from injury, but then showing the heels tagged together, team up on him before he can even get in the ring, before the match can even start. And like I said earlier, before Jeff doing those spots and things happening kind of show you that you wouldn't even have thought, hey, this man just come off a knee surgery not too long ago. I mean, if he did, he's not showing no signs of let go to begin with. He's that typical Hardy Boy style, which they use, which is extreme, and he's not going to allow things like that to keep him down. So good to see that match, and glad to see it, and that he hasn't really changed. He's going to do what he's going to do. So I think this was a really good match to begin Impact, and to begin Impact as we go into the rest of the night. Up next, we see Dixie Carter. She's standing in the back and she's talking to both Gil Kim and Maria. And the last couple weeks we've had two number one contenders match. Last week, remember, we had Velvet Sky versus Madison Rain. And a number one contenders fight in which, Velvet Sky prevailed. And then we had 2 weeks ago, we had Maria. Remember, she was supposed to fight Gil Kim, but then she had the dollhouse do a triple threat, really breaking up the dollhouse. And remember, Jade ended up winning that match. So then Dixie's in the back questioning, both Gail Kim and Marie. She's like, "Where do you think you got the authority to design to have a number one contenders match?" And she looked over at Maria. Maria's like she acted like she couldn't come up with a name who done it, and she looked over at Gail Kim and she said something like, whoever I spoke to. And I was like, okay, so they're not going to let on who done it. So Dixie says, well, I'll tell you what. She says, since this is the case, I'm going to make sure we have a match tonight. And what we're going to do is, since there are two questionable number one contenders for the knockout division title, we're going to have Gail Kim, you, face off against the winners of both Velvet Sky and Jade. So now it's no longer a one-on-one match. It's actually a triple threat match for the knockout division title. So Maria, and then when Dixie turns and leaves, and Maria's like, look what you just did to her. You've made her mad. And then she goes on trying to go to suck up or butter up Dixie, which is what, Maria's tries to do. So we cut to Lashley, and Lashley is shown getting ready in the back. And while Josh Matthews is talking about the street fight, remember this is the second type match. First, Jeff Hardy and Eric Young did the six sides the cage match, and now we see that Lashley and the Pope are getting ready for a street fight match. And remember, this was set up in motion a few weeks back when Lashley was upset and he attacked the Pope and Josh, and the Pope took exception to it the following week. Remember, he fought against Lashley to the back, and then we seen last week where Lashley thought that he was going to intimidate the Pope in the ring, and the Pope said, "Look," he said, "The only regrets I would have is if I go back to that announce table and not do what he felt like he needed to do. So he told Josh that, and Bobby and everybody else, to basically, typically he was going to come back and become a wrestler, that he was going to do this. This is something that he felt he had to do. So it was a good chance to see this. And also, too, they talked about how they were going to have Drew Galloway and Matt Hardy for what he called a last words before their TNA title match. So we look to see that happening as it comes back. So the show backstage, Jeff Hardy is doing his typical thing, and we see we see that he says that Eric Young, he talks about how Eric Young did all that he could to beat him, but he wasn't successful, and he was going to be keeping an eye on the main event between Matt and the main event, and he was going to basically told his creatures, which is his fans, to stay with him. So he was kind of going to keep a close eye on this, scout at the match between these two. So it was just something else to see, but as we come and see that Jeremy Borash is in the ring. First, he talks about a little bit about the TNA match, and they show the highlights and stuff of Drew winning the title and whatnot. And he says that he was there, that he was going to give the challenger and the champion both some final words to say before their match. So first out, of course, is Matt Hardy. And Matt Hardy comes out, and he has Rebby with him. He has Rockstar Spud with him. He has Timers with him, and the baby it comes out along with him. And as he goes to introduce Galloway, Hardy takes the mic, and he said that he should introduce him as a crook, a cheat, and a con man, because he's still bitter over him losing the title. I mean, we've seen this numerous times over championship matches, to where you see a triple threat match or something like that, or a Money in the Bank match, or the Feast or Fired match, which just happens, and it's just opportunity. It's all about opportunity. He doesn't like that. He just felt like, hey, I've lost it, and I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have lost it. That you stole it from me because I went through the match and this, but it's all about opportunity, folks, in professional wrestling. You're gonna, if you get a chance for the title and have it, no matter what the circumstances are, that's what you're going to do. You're going to go out there and you're going to try your best, and you're going to win it whichever way you've got to, because that's your opportunity to do it. So as we see and understand through this, he's bitter about that. And then Hardy introduces Galloway as the man he, quote, will destroy. And then all of a sudden, Galloway's music hits. Galloway comes out, and Matthews said that he talks a good. He gives us a insight that Drew Galloway is the kind of man that would defend the world title anytime, any place, anywhere. He said every day to the week, twice on Sunday if he had to. So he was trying to get the fans to understand that this was a guy that would be willing to fight. He's going to be a fighting champion, not just somebody that fights once a month or once a week or whatever, but he was going to be a fighting champion that whoever ever wanted a title match or a fight, he was going to give it to him. And we saw not only what Jeremy Borash said, but we saw back what happened weeks ago when I remember he challenged all of the Matt Hardy brand to a match. It didn't matter to him whether it was one or all of you. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to be here for a fight, which is good to have. You know, Galloway isn't a big guy, but it's good to have a guy that has that intensity and that heart. That's the kind of person you like having as a champion, and the kind of person that you want defending your company and being the face of your company is one that you can say, hey, this guy's a good fighting champion. So, but then we see he tells and then he gets in the ring and he says that it's a mistake to call this a last word between the two, because he says Matt never shuts up, which is basically the truth, because Matt is all we've seen the last 3 or 4 weeks is Matt all upset, talk at the beginning, no matter what, talk, because he won't. And so we see that that's the case, and it comes out and shows us that Matt looks at Galloway and he says, you're in possession of my property, which he's talking about the TNA World Title belt. And he says, okay, let's just take it easy here and let's just try to settle down here, because We're going to try to settle this right. And Matt goes first and talking, and he says that he should be the champion. He says, "Look, I dress like a champion. I'm surrounded by an entourage of people talking about Rockstar Spud and the Matt Hardy brand like a champion. He's married like a champion. He procreated like a champion. He said that he is a man of success, and he said that nobody works harder than he does, and or has more integrity, which is unlike Galloway." And Hardy says, "Look, I'm going to be the one going home with the title." And Galloway then says that there's one word that describes him and sums him up, and he said that is passionate. He said he doesn't play a character on TV. He's who he is 24/7. He says that Matt used to have this passion when he was a kid watching them grow up and how that passion was there. And he said now it seems like he uses his own son as a prop on TV. And Matt says, "Hey, look, that was uncalled for." And he said, "Look, I've got respect for Jeff, but he says I don't have any respect for you." And he says that he calls Matt calls Jeff Benedict Arnold, and he says it was because um, Galloway beat Jeff. That doesn't mean he could beat him. So he's like, just because you can beat Jeff, don't mean you can beat me. Which we know the talented of the two is, but that's the point of view they made. So we see that Drew said everybody loves Jeff, but nobody likes Matt. So again, we see this week, like last week, he's distinguishing the difference between Matt and Jeff, even though they're brothers, but they're different and they're perceived different in the wrestling world as night and day. As how Jeff, everybody likes him, he's charismatic, and then nobody likes Matt because of the way he's acted and the way he does. And he said that him and Jeff had a heck of a match that where they beat the crap out of each other their match, and he said that he will prove he said that he's the best wrestler. He will prove that he's the TNA champion. And it said, and then all of a sudden Matt runs his mouth to Drew Galloway a little bit where you couldn't quite hear what he was saying, and he said that they've been given a final word of it. And then we see that he wishes him the best of luck. And then all of a sudden, Tyrus takes the mic and tells Galloway, "Hey, I want you to look at me." And he said he laid in the shadows, just being patient. He said he cashed in his briefcase and he won a title, and it was smart to cash it in at the right time, at the right place. And Tyrus said that he won the Bound for Glory and he gets a title shot win and where he wants. And Tyrus said after listening to them talking back and forth, he says that that maybe tonight's he night he shocks the world. So it ended up showing that Tyrus is apparently wanting a title shot with Drew, which it kind of stuns Ribby and Matt and Rockstar. But you think about it, Tyrus hadn't really said nothing when he was with EC3. He was kind of not the bully guy, the bodyguard, and then when he turned, and then when Matt turned heel, he became the same thing for Matt. He's been with both champions, but hasn't had a shot yet. So he's like, "Look, I want Bound for Glory. I get a title match, and tonight might be the night that I shock the world." So we go backstage, and we see the Pope cutting his promo, which we know, like I said, the Pope can cut promos, and he said that Lashley tonight, after tonight, we'll find out that the Pope, is born to fight. That he said he will find out it's a lot easier to jump on it than it is to jump off, which, that comes from the nature boy Ric Flair. So it's a statement he made. So we see this is going to hype, and so far so good. It's pretty good so far. Good promos and good work done. We see that Tyrus is backstage walking around when EC3 approaches him and applauds. He says he didn't know that Tyrus had it in him. He said he thought he was just going to continue to making lateral moves right along with Hardy. And he said that Tyrus cost him the title, and that Karma, he said, is a Carter. So we see EC3 wished him luck and said he'd be watching. So, and Tyrus asked him, "Hey, do you got a crystal ball?" he knows. Tyra said he knows what he will do, and he told EC3 that he hates him. He says, "But I hate you more," EC3 said, which is kind of funny, that little back jawing. But you see, it's kind of letting him know in a way that he's glad that he's finally not he's stepping out on his own a little bit and not just going along with everything else. And we see that basically, which is a good thing because you want to see this happen in this matchup, so or some potential down the road. Give it some good substance here. Um, Up next we have the match, the Pope versus Lashley, the street fight. Pope makes his way to the ring, and of course, Lashley goes and attacks him from behind and ends up working him over, beating on him, jumping on him right there at ringside. And it said that Pope still wasn't even ready because he was still taping his fist when he was attacked. So it showed that Lashley ended up rolling him inside the ring to start the match. So this is twice we've seen the heel attack the face before the match even starts, beat on him some so that we can see, so that the face seems to, which is a Pope in this case, is the underdog already because Lashley's a big man. You know, to me, like I said, if they had positioned Lashley right, he could have been a destructive type, but with his personality and the way he talks and stuff, you just couldn't do that. That's why you need someone like a manager, like a Paul Heyman, someone that can do the talking for you so that you're able to, basically enjoy someone that can look destructive, but don't have to talk and don't have to really say anything, but just look intense and just demolish somebody. But like I said, that's TNA's realm of their own. I always talk about their realm of TNA and how they are. So we see this, and they end up. Matthews is talking about TNA officials about Bound for Glory, and whether it works like feast or fired, and he said that it was no, and that the wrestler is declared ahead of time. Says that you know, Lashley continued to end up beating on down the Pope, and the fans are looking at him. He's just booing them, mocking them, and he spears the Pope, and he ends up shoving him, over the top rope onto the floor. And it says while he's there, Pope ends up getting a chair and he throws it into the face of Lashley, and then he ends up getting a kendo stick. And when you get the kendo stick, they're going to work him over with that. So then he went to the top rope and throw another kendo stick from there, but Lashley speared him on the way down and pinned him. So there you go. Just like that, that's what it was. That kind of match. Afterward, ends up showing up that the Pope makes it to his feet, and then Lashley ends up spearing him again. Uh, and he does with another spear, and EC3, all of a sudden, his music hits. He comes out, and he's going to confront and get in Lashley's face, and he and Lashley ends up staring at each other. And then Lashley ends up exiting the ring and smiles at EC3 while he's backing up the ramp going to the back. And then out of nowhere, which someone we ain't talked about so far yet, the Miracle, Mike Bennett comes out, and he ends up attacking EC3 behind with a chair as they're cutting the break. So then we're like, whoa, wait a minute. Out of nowhere, EC3 comes out, faces off against Lashley. Lashley goes out, then the Miracle comes out. He attacks EC3 with a chair. So, you know, it's just terrible to see and funny to see that happen, all of that happen in a short amount of time. And then it cuts back when we come back, and Matthews is talking about EC3 was along, and Bennett and Maria comes out with her interest, and she starts talking about her promo about how great the Miracle Mike Bennett is, how he's the best wrestler, how TNA needs a miracle, all these things, and EC3 told her she needed to put a sock in it, and he said you need to have your worthless, spineless husband to come out. So Bennett comes out and says that he's nothing like EC3, that his fans, he's like the fans, and he blames everybody else for his problems. And he says he tells EC3 that he needs him to exist so that he can be his excuse. So he's trying to play off EC3, which draw the typical heat, as you would see, and knowing that through this, that he is basically going to drawing the typical heat from against the fans, of course, putting it down, and then EC3 comes back and tells Bennett that he said Bennett exists because he's allowed it has for long, but that it's rapidly coming to an end. And he says he calls him a sad. And Bennett looks at EC3 and he says he sees a sad, pathetic little bitch. Ooh, that's what he said. He said that everybody abandoned EC3 when he lost the title, and EC3 is nothing, and he's nobody only to blame himself. And he says that EC3 can fail and become a loser when he goes on and becomes the new TNA champion. So you see these two jawing back and forth, which that's good. Good substance in this, in the fact that you're seeing these two while, setting up. Now, this is what I like is good promo work, and when you can have these two guys set up and having them going back and cutting good promos. Sometimes to me, that's just as good as if it gets interfered or has a matches. When you can give that substance to it, it's like when you're making a cake and you put all the ingredients in it and you cook it, it turns out right. Well, that's what they're doing with this here between EC3 and the Miracle Mike Bennett is they're putting the substance and the ingredients in together now and through this, and I enjoy it. And we cut to Bennett where Bennett is telling him, he says, he has no problem fighting EC3. He said that Bennett answered his prayer by agreeing to fight him. And he called for Bennett. He said, well, then finish the job. So Bennett acts like he's going to go to the ring, but then he stops and said, you know what? I'll save that till next week. So typical heel, pretend like you're going to the ring to fight him, then at the end back off because fans aren't going to like that. You want to go ahead and get in there and shake it up, throw it down. That's what we want to see. You've done talk. Let's see you go at it now. And EC3 is ready, but you see typical heel. He's going to back down and say wait till next week. So we think that'll be typically a good match for next week's Impact. He told EC3 to have a good night. And when he went to leave, EC3 ran up the stage and jumped on him. So there you go, EC3. That's the way you do it, buddy. Go ahead and jump on him, And they ended up, and he ended up throwing Maria in front of him. Oh, typical Miracle to try to use the woman as a shield to block off EC3 from attacking him. So he ends up throwing Maria in front of him. Maria ends up falling, and EC3 and Mike Bennett are going at it, and they end up in the backstage and then in the parking lot. And EC3 is putting a whipping on him. I mean, he is fighting him, and that's good. And then all of a sudden we see Bennett grab and get a tire iron and hit EC3 with it before climbing his car and driving away. So good back and forth, good fact that they have basically are getting a substance to it. And I like the fact that they went out there and are fighting in the back. I just love those matches. That's just me, but I love when they can do a hardcore match like that, or not even a match, but just attacking each other, beating each other all in up and down, and in the crowd, or whether it's backstage or out there in the parking lots. I love seeing stuff like that when they can carry it from the ring out there. But so we cut away, and then as they come back, Rockstar Spud is backstage. He's talking to Tyrus, and he said Tyrus is brilliant because he knows his plan is to win the match and then hand the title of the Hardy. And he said he tried to get him to sign a contract, and Tyrus told him that he appreciates Spud's penmanship, but he said he's not a fool when he takes the paper and throws it aside. And then all of a sudden, we see the ring introductions for the Knockouts match take place. So he's kind of telling Spud. Spud seems to think, well, you're going to go ahead since you're the big man. Go ahead, you're going to challenge him, and then hand the title after you beat him over to Hardy, and hand the title over to Hardy. But you see, Tyrus is giving him that indication that no, he says, don't think that just yet. As he takes that paper and stuff, and appreciates Spud for the time for writing it up, but he's got other plans. You can see Tyrus is going out for Tyrus, and sometimes when you go to challenge for a title and you get that opportunity, you got to do what you got to do, and sometimes you have to do it for yourself. And like in the position that Tyrus is in, he's not going to get a lot of title shots following behind Hardy. So we see what's going on with this leading into this match. But it's still good seeing EC3 like last week. we see how how much he's able to basically how rugged he can be. Now, remember, this is a kind of a contrast in how he was last week. Because remember, we talked about last week when he was talking, he was trying to get a little throw a little few jokes in there to be a little lighthearted, because he's still trying to build momentum in his character as a baby face and getting the crowd behind him. Because he had been a heel for so long, but we see that he is now we've seen the comedy side last week. We see the rugged, I'm going to fight you, you're going to fight me, rough, rugged, take it to you kind of style, part of his character too. So it's good to see him seeming like this week he's a little bit more focused in it. He had a little more serious undertone to his character when talking to Mike Bennett and than he was last week. So they're trying to basically make a full rounded character out of him, and I like the way he's going. I've always liked EC3 since he's been, because he has that look and he has the character to be, to be their top star if they just push him right. Up next, like I said, is the knockouts for the knockouts title. We see Gail Kim versus Jade and versus Madison Rain in a triple threat. I don't know why I thought it was Velvet Sky. It was Madison Rain that defeated Velvet Sky. So correct me on that one there. Gail Kim is a really good wrestler. Um, Jade seemed like when in her match, her triple threat match, she had a lot of moves, a good skill set. And Madison Rain can pretty much do okay. She does decent. So I think, with them carrying, this should be a decent match. But we see that Gail Kim was on the offensive, and as she was most of the match, and she goes on the top rope. But then guess what? Maria comes out as usual, hits her on her side with the women's title, and Jade ends up hitting Gail with STO and pinning her. So we see that Jade ends up winning the TNA Knockouts title. So you know I don't know. It's just that when she hit her, it didn't even look. It's like, did she really hit her hard enough? That's the thing with the women's working on your technique and how you're doing it makes a match more believable. If they botch a move, when they do things like that, it just didn't handle the fact that um it looked decent enough for it to call for the reason for her going over like that. You're like, oh, it could have been a little bit stronger in what she did, but typical knockouts ending of this match, and Jay just didn't seem to really get over because you have Maria coming out there, and and I know this is setting up a feud between Maria and Gail, but just having Jade win it that way kind of seemed like she needed assistance. So if she's really going to be TNA Knockouts champion, she's got to be a little bit stronger. And true, she's got the skill set, but by getting an assist from Maria, it just really shows you that she really didn't get over like she should have. So excuse me. Okay, we come back and we see that backstage Galloway's talking, and he's talking about how, like he did before, and he said, "Look, I've worked all my life for this, and I'm not going to lose it to either Matt Hardy, or Tyrus." So he's letting them know that he's talking to him, and he's worked hard, and that's what Galloway is doing, is trying to let the people know, look, I'm going to fight. I'm not going to give up that easy. So. As we cut to also backstage in another place, we see Shane Helms, the Hurricane, talking to Trevor Lee, which is the X Division champion, and he remembers talking last week to Eddie Edwards. Remember, they were in the ring together. Trevor Lee and Helms and Eddie Edwards were together, and he talked about possibly wanting them to Trevor Lee and him to team together. And so we see this week he says it's time to find out if Eddie does have an answer. So um, we see him come back, and remember last week, Josh Matthews talks about with Al Snow. Remember he attacked Grotto last week, and he said he backstage that he goes to Billy Corgan and he says, "Look, you just can't open up doors and let anybody walk in. And he said, look, Billy Corgan tells him, says, look, I know you're a producer and you broke Grotto's arm. He says that Corgan says, I do respect tradition, but man uses that, you know what, Snow? You're suspended for a week without pay. And he said the brass, the company, the head manager, they expect you to go out and give a public apology. Oh, and it's just funny how that happens. But he's kind of letting Snow know, hey, you're supposed to set an example. You're a producer. You're not supposed to go out there and interject yourself into these matches of thing and hurting these wrestlers like this. So I expect you're going to be suspended a week, and you've got to make a public apology. So we cut back and Shane Helms and Trevor Lee are in the middle of the ring, and he asked for Eddie, and he needed to come on out and find out what decision did he have about teaming, with Trevor Lee, and he says that Eddie comes out and he says, I know why you want the team, because he said there's an automatic title shot that comes with it, and that shot belongs to him and Davey Richards. So we see that Eddie has been taking this time to kind of reflect back, and Eddie wasn't going to be a fool because he knows that as the Wolves, Eddie and Davey have a title match, but by him joining forces with Trevor Lee, that states that then Trevor Lee will automatically have that title. He will be in that tag team title picture with him, and he says, "Look, you don't really deserve it." He says, "No, that's okay. I don't think I want to do that." And it shows back at Lee when he says that Lee doesn't look too happy with him. And Helms tells him, he says, "Look, I'm gonna get what I want." And when Helms starts to take his jacket off, Beer Money comes out. And when that happens, you see Helms and Lee leave the ring because Beer Money, remember, they tagged up with Eddie Edwards before, and they weren't gonna have no part of that. And it says that they come up that they called him out over an idea to double team Edwards, and he talks junk about Helm's jacket, making him like a booger, which because it's that green, that green color. It says Helm shook their heads and left, and Storm had spoke about the tag division because Beer Money, has just now got back together, and remember they had the open up challenge against the Bromans a few weeks back, and and I guess it's good to see that they're wanting to make sure that it's solid, the division is solid, so that they maybe can establish, because a good tag division in TNA is important. You got to establish not only those guys that you've got to establish your tag teams, not only those guys higher up, but your tag teams, your X division guys, your tag guys. You got to have every division, your knockouts division, all these divisions and stuff high. So they're out there for that. Well, all of a sudden, Decay's music comes out, and they walk on stage, and with Rosemary, and then Abyss talks, and he said they took the titles for fun once, and he says now they're going to end up taking them for real. So we see now a tag match forming up here, and he said that the clock was ticking, and Storm said it's always beer 30 and ass kicking o'clock. So that's kind of funny. And then all of a sudden, both teams get into it, and security has to come out there and try to pull them apart as they end up going to breaks. I thought that was pretty funny. I like Beer Money. They always have made me laugh. So very enjoyable to watch. So all of a sudden now we see that Matthews is back, and he's talking about the main event, and it was the time for final words from Hardy, and he said that his brand is being built, being smart and being resourceful. And then we see that as Matt is coming out, Titus slowly walks out behind him, and Hardy says that Galloway stole the food from his plate, and his wife can only get 4 pedicures per week. So we're all supposed to feel bad because he's because he doesn't have the title anymore. That his life is suffering so badly because of it, which is just typical Heat, which is good Heat for it, to have him to say that, because you want the crowd like, oh, really? He's got the audacity to say that. So we get into it, and we see that Matt said that the show is called Hardy's Revenge. and he's going to get and take his belt back. And it said that he turned and saw Tyrus and asked him if he was ready. And then it says, and Tyrus just is glaring at him and didn't say a word to him, just looking right at him. So, we wonder what's going on in the big man's mind. And, it was okay. I mean, the segment was all right. I mean, to me, it wasn't too big of a deal about having Matt go out there saying all right. Really, to me, it was really a waste of time. And, it was kind of funny how Eddie didn't accept um, accept the title match, to take, um, and take his because he could have taken it and then maybe have had them to focus more on the tag team division rather than the X division. And so it's kind of funny that he had declined that, but you understand why he done either two because they deserve their title shot, and to give it to somebody that's undeserving of it and just wants to team up because it's an automatic bid, it ain't the right thing to do. So we think that's pretty understanding of why he done. We see here that backstage, Beer Money is cutting a promo, and Bobby Roode's talking. He says, "Come on, come on." He's upping up the tag team challenge here. He said there'll be one match, and he would prove that they are the best of the best. So, they're opening up the challenge here, and all of a sudden the ring entrances for the main event are about to take place, folks. This is the main event. Tyrus comes out with Hardy as usual. He says that Tyrus must declare if he wants to be in the match. And Hardy looked like he was about to declare, but Hardy attacked Galloway, and Tyrus dropped to the floor instead. So they decided, well, is this real? Was it just a distraction to Drew? Whichever happened. But they end up cutting the break, and Hardy is in control, of course, with Tyrus helping him. And then we see the typical Galloway make his comeback, and he chops him a few times, and overhead belly to belly suplex he gives Matt Hardy, and then they're going back again and teasing Borash is about whether Tyrus thought actually about declaring for the match or not, and Matt Hardy ends up somehow supposedly getting an ankle injury, and he took off his boot, and then Spud tried to interfere while this happened, and Galloway threw him over the top rope, and then Hardy struck Galloway with the boot and to get a 2 count. So crafty Hardy's going to try anything and everything he can and be very deceptive and trying to get his title. So he's trying to pull out all stops and all the way he can possibly do it. In the underhanded way he can do it, that's what he's going to try to do because that's what he figured he was going to do. It's his revenge, his show. He's going to take his title back home and take his position back. So we see that Hardy went up and he jumped up into Galloway's boot, and Galloway ended up performing the future shot DDT and had Hardy pinned, but then Tyrus goes up there, grabs the referee's going to count, pulls his leg and pulls the referee to the floor. And then all of a sudden that prompts Jeff Hardy to go out there. He jumps on Tyrus, puts Tyrus down with the twist of fate onto a chair. Matt hits a twist of fate on Galloway and yelled to Jeff to, like he said last week, get out of his life of trying to focusing on Jeff rather than on the pin. He ends up trying to pin Galloway, kicks out to a count of 2. And Matt slaps Galloway and he went for the twist of fate again, but then Galloway goes and counters that to the Iron Maiden, in which Matthews noted was the same move that Kurt Angle tapped out to. So, trying to say something there. So, Matt joined that club by tapping out as well, and Jeff applauded him from ringside. So, Drew Galloway ends up beating Matt Hardy to retain the TNA title. And we ended up seeing a video for next week, EC3 versus the Miracle Mike Bennett, and talks about the bad blood between Matt and Jeff continues to escalate. The feud and the differences between them come to be more fanatical. And to me, it was just an entertaining show. The match was, and Matt, only thing he tries to do, true to Matt Brand for him, and that's do whatever he can to win. Faking a foot injury, hitting him with the boot, doing all that he can do. Having Rockstar Spud come in, have Tyrus do what he can to interfere. And it was decent. Weren't that many matches, but it was something that was good. And the talking segments were actually pretty good with it. and I thought it was actually a pretty good TNA Impact overall. So that's what's went on for this week's TNA wrap up for April the 5th. And this is Bill Mack. And if you like this video or many more TNA videos, just like each one, subscribe to my channel. I do them each week. If you like WWE, me and Bullet B, Team B wrestling show, we do weekly WWE wrap ups, and we also do post show, post WWE pay per view um, reviews as well, so and previews as well. So until next time, until next week, take care of each one. Have a great one, and we'll see you again.